You can be loved, adored, touched, held, and still feel completely hollow inside. You can lie next to someone who says they die for you, and yet, deep down, you know they don't really see you. Not the real you. Because you don't even see you. Carl Jung said it like a whisper most people ignore. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. You're not empty because others don't love you. You're empty because you're a stranger to yourself. Now pause. What if I told you that every heartbreak you've ever had, every time you've been ghosted, abandoned, cheated, or misunderstood, wasn't about them at all? It was your own shadow, slipping through the cracks in your soul, sabotaging every chance at peace you could have had. But you weren't taught to see it. You were taught to chase love to earn it, to prove yourself worthy of it. If your value had to be validated by someone else's eyes. So you gave, and gave, and gave, until all that remained was a bitter question echoing inside you. Why does every relationship leave me feeling more alone than before? This isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility. Because Jung's warning was never about romance. It was about survival. If you don't confront the truth of your inner world, your relationships will rot from the inside out, and no matter how beautiful their smile is, how perfect the moments seem, the emptiness will return, like a ghost, like a curse. But tonight, you're going to break that curse. Tonight, you're going to see what they never taught you to see. Because the enemy isn't your partner. It's the reflection you refuse to face. So let's go into the dark. Not to stay there, but to reclaim what's been hidden from you for far too long. Let me ask you something that might sting. When was the last time you entered a relationship without trying to become what the other person needed? You adapt. You shapeshift. You become more patient, more funny, more sexual, more chill. Not because it's you, but because you're terrified that if you don't, they'll leave. You don't love them. You survive through them. Jung would call this your persona, the false self you created to navigate the world. It smiles. It agrees. It plays the role. But it is not you. And every time you bring that mask into a relationship, you do something dangerous. You make them fall in love with the illusion, not the reality. Then the mask cracks, and suddenly you're too much. Too emotional. Too distant. Too intense. But the truth is, they're not shocked by you. They're shocked by your truth finally showing up. And you're devastated because you thought love could save you. But it couldn't. Because love built on a mask is not love at its performance. And no performance lasts forever. Here's the second cut. Deeper, darker. You attract what you deny. You want deep connection, but you're terrified of vulnerability. You want loyalty, but you choose people you know, subconsciously, will betray you. Why? Because Jung's concept of the shadow, the dark parts of you you've buried, they don't just disappear. They hunt you through the people you choose to love. You hate when they ignore you, but you ignore your own voice. You despise their coldness, but you shut down every time your inner child cries out for care. You think the pain they cause is new. It's not. It's the mirror of a wound that's been bleeding in silence for years, and until you face the source, you'll keep attracting lovers who poke that wound. Again, and again, and again. You call it bad luck, but your shadow calls it home. You feel it now, don't you? That slight tightness in your chest, that flicker of truth you've tried to silence, that scream inside you saying, I've been betraying myself to be loved by others. That's not weakness, that's awakening. Because the moment you realize your pain has a pattern, you stop being the victim and you start becoming the seer. This is where your transformation begins, and what comes next will expose the hidden game beneath every relationship you've ever had. The game you didn't even know you were playing. Because the real war isn't between you and your lover, it's between you and your unloved self. And if you can face that, you will never feel hollow in love again. Not because someone completes you, but because you are no longer afraid to be whole. Dark music fades slightly, tension lingers, you're ready now. You've touched the edge of the shadow, But there's more waiting just beneath the surface. Things no one ever told you. Things that will change the way you see everyone, including yourself. Are you brave enough to go deeper? Say yes, and I'll show you the truth that most people spend their entire lives running from. You kept chasing love because somewhere along the line, someone convinced you that your wholeness lived in another person's hands. Maybe it was a parent. Maybe it was the one who walked away when you needed them most. Maybe it was the silence after a fight, that cold, echoing silence that said, "You're too much. You ask for too much. You are a burden." So you learned. You learned to tone yourself down. To hide your fire. To make yourself easier to digest. More pleasing. More lovable. More forgettable. And now, you wonder why your relationships feel hollow. Why you feel invisible even when you're not alone. Let me tell you something Jung whispered through every one of his teachings. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Fate didn't bring you the wrong people, your unconscious did. And the deeper reason you feel empty is because you've never truly let yourself be known. Let's talk about emotional starvation. Not the kind where someone forgets your birthday or doesn't text back fast enough. No, I'm talking about the deeper, slower kind. The kind where you give them all of you, your energy, your loyalty, your time, and they look at you like a stranger because they don't see your soul. They see your mask, and you let them. Because showing your real soul, that's dangerous, isn't it? What if they reject it? What if they abandon you after seeing your truth? So instead, you starve. But you do it beautifully, smiling through it, laughing, pretending. And your shadow watches in silence. It grows fangs in the dark, waiting for the moment to erupt. And it always does, in jealousy, in overreaction, in quiet rage you can't explain. It wasn't just a fight. It was your repressed self trying to scream, "I want to be seen," not managed, not tolerated, seen. But that version of you, the raw, messy, primal truth, you buried it long ago. And every time you fall in love, you bury it again, hoping this time it'll be different. But how can it be? You're building intimacy with armor on. Now let me tell you something no one tells you. Every relationship is a negotiation with your own trauma. It's not just two hearts meeting, it's two histories colliding. Every look, every argument, every silence, it's filtered through wounds you haven't even named yet. That's why the same arguments keep happening. Why you feel like you're dating different people, but living the same emotional story. Jung would call this a projection. You're not just seeing them. You're seeing the version of them your unconscious needs them to be, to reenact your unresolved wounds. You turn lovers into parents. You expect them to fix what was broken before they even arrived. And when they don't, you feel betrayed. But it's not their betrayal, it's the betrayal of a hope you never voiced, because you didn't know it lived inside you. And this is where most people give up. They blame love. They say relationships don't work, or people always leave. But what they're really saying is, I don't know how to stop betraying myself in order to keep someone else. Because here's the truth that will shake you awake. Until you heal your relationship with yourself, every relationship will be a slow form of self-destruction. You will fall in love with potential. You will confuse attention for intimacy. You will give until you're empty and wonder why you feel so resentful. But it's not because love is broken, it's because you were never taught to be loved as your full self and your shadow. It's done waiting. You see, there's something primal in you, something older. Then the heart breaks. Something buried beneath the expectations and the masks. It's the part of you that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. And when you don't live in alignment with that part, you suffer. Because your soul knows when you're lying, even if your mouth keeps smiling. Jung didn't just speak of healing the shadow, he spoke of individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. That doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means integrating everything, the lovable and the ugly, the healer and the monster, the mask and the face beneath it. And when you do that, something shifts. You stop chasing people who reflect your wounds. You start attracting people who resonate with your truth. Not because they complete you, But because you are no longer trying to be completed, you are whole. And wholeness doesn't beg to be loved. It radiates love. Now, let me pull you even deeper. What if I told you that most people you love don't even exist? Not really. Because you don't love them. You love the story your unconscious has written about them. And that story is almost always a lie, built from your needs, your trauma, your hopes. This is why you fall so fast. Why the fantasy feels so good until reality cracks it open. Because you weren't loving the person, you were loving the projection. And when they start acting like themselves instead of the character you cast them to be, you feel abandoned. But it wasn't them leaving you. It was the illusion dying. And illusions always die. Violently. Still with me? Good. Because what comes next is where things turn. You've seen the pattern, that you've felt the wound. Now you're going to own it. Not by fixing them. Not by finding the right partner. But by becoming the version of you that no longer runs from truth. The strategist. The whole one. The mirror breaker. Because when you walk through the fire of your unconscious, you don't come out wounded. You come out untouchable. And that's exactly where we're going next. They say the truth will set you free. But they forget to mention the part where it destroys you first. Because waking up to the fact that you've been living in illusions, bonding through wounds, begging to be seen by people wearing blindfolds, it doesn't feel like healing. It feels like grief. You grieve for the versions of yourself that tried so hard. The one who texted first every time, the one who stayed up late, waiting for a call that never came. The one who bent until you broke, just to feel wanted. You grieve the time you'll never get back. The dreams you sold for a hint of affection. The nights you cried silently because you didn't want to seem too emotional. But this grief, it's sacred. It's the fire that purifies the soul. Jung knew this. He said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Because until you face the pain, you can't claim the power hiding inside it. And right now, you are standing at the edge of that power. Let's stop pretending. Let's stop acting like love is always soft. Like it's just flowers and cuddles and poetic words. Sometimes love is war. A war between the person you are and the person you become when you're afraid of being alone. That version of you, the one who chases, who shrinks, who compromises core values just to not lose someone. That's not love. That's survival. You weren't loving them. You were clinging to them because you didn't feel safe alone in the dark. But here's the real turning point. Loneliness isn't a punishment, it's a portal. The reason most people never evolve emotionally is because they run from that portal. They jump from person to person, from dopamine hit to dopamine hit, from one illusion to the next, never stopping, never facing what's waiting in the silence. But you're different. You didn't run, you're still here, and that means you're ready to walk into the one place most never dare enter, your own shadow. What happens in that shadow? First, the lies melt. You see every excuse you made, every manipulation you tolerated, every time you silenced yourself to keep the peace. And it's ugly. You'll hate yourself a little. You'll want to go back, to numb out, to blame someone else. But if you stay, if you keep breathing, keep watching, keep confronting, something magical happens. The shame begins to shift, not into pride, not into confidence, but into ownership. And that is where power lives, because when you own your darkness, no one can use it against you. When you know your patterns, no one can trap you in them. When you've tasted your emptiness and survived it, you stop begging for scraps of love. You realize, I am the source. I am the ocean I've been trying to drink from others. This is what Jung called individuation, not a spiritual buzzword, not self-help fluff. It is a dangerous, sacred path, where you dismantle everything you thought you were, to uncover the self that's been watching all along. The one who doesn't need to manipulate to feel safe. The one who doesn't collapse when someone withdraws. The one who doesn't become a slave to love just to feel like they matter. You become whole, not perfect, not invincible, but real. And realness is rare. It's intimidating. It will scare off the people who fed off your wounds, but it will magnetize those who are walking the same path. People who don't want your mask. People who don't need you to be small so they can feel big. People who want your soul raw, untamed, true. Let me tell you a secret about power. Most people think it's control, that it's about getting what you want, bending others to your will. But that's not power. That's fear, dressed in dominance. Real power is this, when you can sit in your solitude and feel full. Not because someone validated you. Not because you won them back. Not because your phone lit up with a heart emoji. But because you finally turned inward, faced the hunger, and realized you were the feast all along. And when you reach that place, everything changes. You don't chase love anymore. You attract it without effort, without masks, without fear. You no longer choose from desperation. You choose from clarity, from power, from truth. And now you're standing at the edge of something deeper than you've ever known. A relationship with yourself that doesn't feel like abandonment. A silence that doesn't feel like loneliness. An identity that doesn't need to be mirrored by someone else's approval. You are stepping out of the role of the lover who loses themselves and into the role of the creator. You don't fall into love anymore. You build it brick by brick from the foundation of wholeness. So when they leave, you don't crumble. When they stay, you don't disappear into them. You remain solid, clear, complete. You stop searching for a home in someone else's heart because you've already found it inside your own chest. This is your transformation. And it doesn't come from reading more or dating better or fixing others. It comes from walking into your own shadows and making peace with what you find there. Because the moment you say, "This is me, all of me, take it or leave it," you stop being the victim of emotional starvation. You become the one who feeds yourself. You become the strategist, the mirror breaker, the sovereign soul no longer ruled by the ghosts of unhealed love. There comes a moment, quiet, unannounced, where you sit with yourself in the stillness of the night and you realize you don't need them anymore. Not the ones who ghosted you. Not the ones who breadcrumbed you with half-love. Not the ones who touched your body but never saw your soul. You finally see them for what they were, mirrors, reflecting the parts of you that were still hungry, still fractured, still doubting your own worth. And now that mirror is shattered. The illusion is broken. And you are no longer a beggar at the banquet of love. You've become something far more dangerous. You've become whole. But don't misunderstand this. Wholeness doesn't mean you'll never feel lonely again. It doesn't mean your heart won't ache or your past won't whisper lies. It means that when those things come, you don't collapse. You sit with the ache. You listen to the whispers, and then you answer back with truth, with clarity, with a fire in your chest that wasn't there before. Because now you know the emptiness you once felt in relationships was never really about them. It was about the child inside you who still believed, "I must be chosen to be valuable. I must be loved to be real." But Jung ripped the veil off that lie. He showed us that the self, the true self, does not need to be loved. It needs to be integrated. It doesn't want applause. It wants truth. And truth doesn't come through attention. It comes through alignment. So what happens now? Now you become terrifying. Not because you hurt people, but because you no longer tolerate being hurt. Not because you're cold, but because you're clear. You can still love. In fact, you love deeper than ever, but from overflow, not scarcity. You give freely, but never at the cost of your own soul. You walk away not out of pride, but out of peace. You no longer play the games. You don't chase. You choose. You don't manipulate. You magnetize. Because once you've met yourself in the dark, no one can take you back to the shadows you've already conquered. And here's the final truth, the one no one tells you. Most people are not ready for someone like you. They say they want depth, but they swim in the shallow. They say they want honesty, but they flinch at the mirror. They say they want connection, but only the kind that doesn't require transformation. And you are the transformation. Your presence will challenge them. Your self-respect will provoke them. Your wholeness will feel like rejection to those still ruled by their wounds. Let them be uncomfortable. You are no longer here to shrink for anyone. Your life is not a theater for their validation, it's a temple. And only those willing to take off their masks will be allowed. So the question isn't, will I ever be loved? The question is, will I ever be seen for who I truly am? And now, finally, you have the courage to demand it. You don't settle for someone who keeps you half-fed. You don't ache for the ones who didn't choose you. You bless them. You release them, and you rise. Because once you've awakened, you stop asking, what's wrong with me? You start asking, what does this relationship awaken in me that I now get to heal? That's power, that's Jungian mastery. It's not about controlling others. It's about no longer being controlled by yourself and no longer being a slave to the hungry child within and no longer chasing people who reflect your pain. Instead of your potential, you've outgrown the performance. You've outgrown the mask. You've outgrown the emptiness. And now you speak the words no wounded version of you ever could. I am the love I was searching for. And from that space, you attract only those who can meet you in the fire, not to rescue you, but to stand with you. S warriors. Souls who've also dared to become whole. So here's what I want from you. If this woke something up inside you, if it pierced the part of you that's been aching to break free, don't let it fade. Comment below with the words, I choose wholeness. So I know you're one of us. Hit that like button, not for me, but to mark this moment in time when your story started to change, and subscribe, because this is just the beginning of your psychological awakening. You're no longer walking blind. You see the game. You see the pattern, and now you're free to rewrite it. You were never empty. You were just waiting to remember who you are. Now you do. Welcome back, warrior. The world's been waiting for this version of you.